Steam has a billion-dollar problem it's currently being sued for yet again, as it's safe to say that Valve's situation just got so much worse in the last couple of weeks after they were already hit with a $900 million lawsuit over anti-competitive pricing on Steam, because now the company's facing yet another legal battle. But this time, the lawsuit's coming from someone a little bit more serious, the New York State government. And now they're targeting something that's been a part of their business model for years. But before we get into the lawsuit itself, let's make sure that everyone's on the same page when it comes to loot boxes, because obviously loot box gets thrown around a lot. But why does New York have a problem with it? So besides Steam, Valve also develops games like, Dota, Team Fortress, and Counter-Strike. And Counter-Strike specifically is the main game of the center of all this. So from just playing the game, you can randomly get a loot box. But if you want to open the loot box, you have to pay for a key, which is I think it's like $1.90 or something like that. And inside of those boxes, you have randomized cosmetic items like, custom weapon skins or glove skins. And just to be clear, none of these skins does anything functional in the game. It's just all for cosmetic or visual purposes. So it doesn't make the game pay to win, but a lot of players do choose to collect these items. Correction, keys cost $2.50. It's been a while since I've opened a case. But essentially, the loop is you get a free box through playing, and then you spend real money on a key to open it, and then you get a randomly selected item. And most of the time, you get something that's worth less than the key. But sometimes you get something that costs a decent amount of money. So there was one skin that sold over $1 million in 2024, and the entire Counter-Strike skin market was valued at over $4 billion as of early 2025. So clearly, there is a lot of money. This is technically a $5 billion potential liability for Valve. One could call it a $5 billion problem, or one could say it's a $5 billion blessing, depending on who you ask. Up until now, it's been a blessing for Valve, and we'll get into why. Because you do have a whole economy where many players put a decent amount of their net worth into Counter-Strike items. And I mean, when you look at year-over-year returns, it's actually worked out pretty nicely for them. And I guess that's just looking aside from Valve changing how they do trade-up contracts, which is one aspect of the game, which caused all knives in the game to drop 40% in value overnight. But yeah, I feel like after 2020, all sorts of random markets became extremely valuable. You had the trading card games blew up massively, Counter-Strike items, the car market went crazy. Basically, anything that was scarce and that you could collect went absolute crazy in 2020. But for those of you guys who aren't familiar with the Counter-Strike skin buy key and then open box system, it does get a little bit interesting because unlike most games, with similar systems, Valve actually lets you do something with the items you win. You can trade them, you can sell them through their own platform, the Steam Community Market, and you can also sell your items and receive Steam Wallet credit where you can then spend it on other games, skins, or physical Steam products like the Steam Deck. And then on top of that, many players also connect their Steam profiles to third-party marketplaces where skins can be sold for real money and withdrawn to a bank account. Or they could also be gambled. So there's this entire economy where these skins are worth X amount of money and you can insert them into random gambling sites and then play with that currency of what the skin was worth. Now, Valve doesn't officially support these third-party websites, and they've definitely made it a whole lot harder for them since they first started building them, because before, when there was no trade bans, people would just trade items instantly, and that was the Wild West of both third-party markets and third-party gambling sites. But back to why the $5 billion skin economy is a massive blessing for Valve, because Valve takes a 15% cut on all Steam Community Market transactions. So whether you win big or spend endlessly chasing something rare, they are profiting either way. And the opening animation for these cases on CS2 is a spinning wheel, like a carousel of possible rewards that lands on whatever you're gonna get. And the lawsuit also specifically points out the animation even includes a near miss effect, where, high value items can appear right next to the one you actually landed on. That technique has been used in casino machines for decades to create the feeling that you almost won something better. And you know this, if you've ever opened a case or watched CSGO creators open cases, you've seen people crash out at being right next to their desired outcome.
Oh my god, fy fan vad nära! Alltså
But on February 25th, 2026, New York Attorney General Lolita James filed a lawsuit against Valve in state court in Manhattan. And her argument is essentially that what Valve is running isn't a game mechanic, it's gambling. And gambling outside of very specific circumstances is illegal under New York's constitution and penal law. And the way New York defines gambling is when someone stakes something of value on a game of chance in which they might receive something of value depending on the outcome. According to Lolita James, Valve's loot box system fits that definition exactly. You pay for a key, you open a box, and you get what is entirely determined by chance. And the items you receive can be resold for real money. So according to Lolita, per New York's legal framework, that combination makes it gambling. And the AG's investigation even included that someone converting a knife skin into actual cash by selling it on Steam Marketplace, using the proceeds to buy a Steam Deck and reselling the console offline. And I guess that's why you can get Steam Decks sold on like eBay or third-party websites for cheaper than what you can on the Steam store, because I guess people are just trying to, liquidate their Steam funds. And I'm not gonna lie, that's a clever workaround. But now, a significant chunk of the lawsuit focuses specifically on the younger players, because let's be for real, these online games always have the chance of teenagers and kids playing them as well. So the office argues that exposing children to loot box mechanics introduces them to gambling behaviors at a formative part of their development. And obviously one could argue that Counter-Strike isn't a game meant for children, and that's made pretty clear on its Steam page. But I mean, I played it as a kid, and I definitely was exposed to gambling through Counter-Strike first. Now, that is through third-party gambling websites, but it's still interesting regardless. So, I mean, a lot of this should fall on the parents, as the platform itself also provides parental control tools, but it definitely does lead us to an interesting conversation to have. But in terms of what New York is actually asking for this lawsuit, there are a few things on the table. First, they want Valve to stop offering loot box systems in the state forever, and they want restitution paid back to every New Yorker who spent money on keys. And the biggest ask is a fine worth 3 times whatever Valve profited from these practices in New York. And that exact number, that's not public. But between key sales and marketplace commissions across one of the most populated states in the country, it's safe to say that we're talking about something in the tens of millions at the minimum, but most likely into the billion, which is why most likely Valve has $1 billion problem here. Because you're talking key sales, case sales, and marketplace transactions in the state of New York. I would not be surprised if we're in the $1 billion territory there. However, I think if this does go to trial, just like in the last video I made about a lawsuit against Valve, there are several pretty clear arguments that the company could use here. The first one being Counter-Strike's age rating and their built-in parental controls. And not only that, but the odds of every loot box item are publicly disclosed within the game. And I guess the biggest one is there's no real way to withdraw cash out of Steam. You have to go through a third-party website, like going through like eBay with the Steam Decks, or Facebook Marketplace, or a third-party like Counter-Strike skin website where you exchange your skins for crypto or something like that. But I also feel like there's a broader comparison that this does feel very close to, which, is trading card games like, Pokemon, Magic, sports cards. They basically all operate in a similar fashion. You pay a fixed price, you get randomized cards. Some are worth a lot of money, but most of them are worth not that much at all. And then you have an entire secondary market built around the valuable ones. My blue eyes! And to my knowledge, nobody's suing, Wizards of the Coast or the Pokemon Company for this. I guess the only difference here is that Counter-Strike and TF2 items are digital. None of that automatically means that Valve is legally in the right here, but it does explain why this debate has been running on for years without any real resolution. Because there are some genuine arguments on both sides, and the line between game mechanic and gambling can be a little blurry sometimes. And I don't know if that's just me being a little bit desensitized, because we live in this like hyper gambling society now. I feel like after 2020, people just start gambling on everything. I mean, sports betting got way bigger than ever. Now you have prediction markets coming into play, and then obviously you have all the crypto meme coin speculation. Unfortunately, all of this has been very normalized in society, and it's pretty sad. But this is kind of a slippery slope, because it's like, if you start regulating this, what does that mean for trading card games? Like, there's is it Thomas Sowell that says Sowell? Is it Thomas Sowell that says there's no real solutions, just trade-offs? I feel like that's where we are here today. But Belgium and Netherlands have moved to restrict and outright ban certain loot box systems back in 2018, classifying them as gambling under their own laws. And even more recently, in early 2025, the Federal Trade Commission went after Congosphere, the studio behind Genshin Impact.
I think this guy's a lost cause. Why don't we just cut our losses and get out of here?
And they hit them with a $20 million fine for allegedly misleading players about their actual odds of winning valuable items. So, this conversation in the gaming community has been alive for a long time. But as of right now, this is just beginning. Valve hasn't made any public statements, no trial date has been set, and cases like this tend to move extremely slowly. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But the stakes here go well beyond just Valve, because if New York wins this case, it probably wouldn't affect only the CSGO skins, but also how everything else similar to this works. So I guess all we can really do is wait and see what happens. But if you're new here, feel free to subscribe, drop a like if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Peace.